Well, welcome, Amy. I'm so glad you could make it. You all know Amy, I know already from her wonderful contributions to the Fairy Tale magazine and here at the Fairy Godparents Club. But I have the pleasure of formally introducing her to all of you tonight. So, in addition to being a mother and a reader and a cookie lover who currently lives in Colorado, Amy is a novelist and a 2024 Praiseworthy Award finalist. Her books include sweet contemporary rom-coms and a series of sweet romantic standalone fairy tale retellings, including two of my favorites, Smoke, Steel, and Ivy, which is a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, Clever, Cursed, and Storied, which reworks Kate Crackernuts. And coming up, and Kristen just put the beautiful graphic up on the screen for all of us to see, is a new novella in the series, Curses, Diamonds, and Toads, which reworks some of the kind and unkind girl stories. And this is publishing tentatively, I believe, on December 20th, just in time for the winter solstice. And it is free to Amy's newsletter subscribers, I believe. So I'm going to put in the chat Amy's website so all of you can click on that and maybe sign up and get involved in some of that fun. So, Amy, let's start just with the simple question. How and why do you find inspiration in fairy tales, and particularly in these lesser known fairy tales that you've been working with in your stories?
Oh my gosh, thank you, Kelly, for that intro. And I love fairy tales. I always have. And part of the reason why I like fairy tales is that it's a really safe place to explore what our values are and how our values are circumstantial. Beauty, for example, is something we value and celebrate in our heroine Beauty from Beauty and the Beast. But beauty, when it comes to the Queen and Snow White, is something kind of sinister and scary. And I love that we have these tales where we can kind of look at values from different angles. Cleverness is one that's, really prized in tales like or Kate Crackernuts or even in Puss in Boots. But that kind of like clever, I'm gonna use my wits to figure this out, that can kind of get sort of like it can kind of become something a little sinister in other tales. I think about Rumpelstiltskin and how our heroine gets into this bargain where they're going to hold her to it even though it was made under duress, and while she still has to use her wits, it's sort of this moment of reckoning instead of like a moment to celebrate, well, let's outwit him, but first it's like, no, you've got to atone. And so I really find it interesting how we can appreciate fairy tales for the magic or for the celebration of what love is and how love can transform us, but we can also use them as a place to explore what do we value as a community, what do we value individually. And when it comes to lesser known fairy tales, I really find it interesting to sort of look at the characters and kind of twist the tales and figure out, okay, is there something about, with the, how did you describe it? I always think of it as good girl, bad girl with the sisters in
Kind and
Diamonds and
unkind
Toads.
girls. Yeah.
Kind and unkind. I love that. I like to kind of look at it and go, okay, is there a reason why this story isn't as popular? Why we're uncomfortable with this dichotomy? And and then is there a way for me to sort of explore and to pull out what I want from fairy tales, which is comfort and hope and the reassurance that things can resolve. So those are some of the reasons why I love fairy tales, but there's lots of
Love
reasons.
that. I love that. I think I heard you say, or I read somewhere that Curses, Diamonds, and Toads, which is based on the Kind and Unkind Girls or the Diamonds and Toads story, was a story that you had only really been introduced to quite recently, and it inspired your new novella. Can you give us just a preview of what's coming up in the novella without giving any spoilers, of course?
Absolutely. So this is true. I learned about this novella just this year. Kate mentioned it in her February newsletter about how she was hoping to see some of these lesser known tales. And so I was like, oh, one I'm unfamiliar with. And, I read it. There's a a good sister who's blessed by a fairy at a well, and there is a wicked sister who is cursed by the same fairy at the well. And as a mama who has cleaned and taken care of a lot of physical needs, including when things come up and out of people's mouths, I thought both the blessing and the curse in this particular story were revolting and equally worthy of like, oh dear, both of those girls need help. Um, these are going to prove to be problematic and curses for both of them. So that was kind of my initial revulsion and going, well, no wonder this isn't being widely shared. This is kind of gross. Things, I don't care if it's diamonds or snakes coming out of someone's mouth. This is not, this is icky. The mechanism of how this happens isn't pleasant. So that kind of led into, well, how would someone cope if they had this? And that led me to discover my heroine, Astrid Lucia, who is nonverbal for a lot of my story. For reasons that become very apparent in the middle of it.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. And as a mother who runs away from her children whenever they have a stomach flu, I totally get your aversion to everything to do with that. Hidden identity is a big trope that you return to again and again in your works, Amy. Why does the thought of a hidden identity sort of intrigue you?
Yeah, I think that we're all with modern life wearing so many hats, and that we are sort of um, always aware of, well, who do I get to be in this situation? You mentioned you're a mommy who has to flee when the stomach flu hits. And I'm sure you don't get to flee very far because I know how it works. But like, we are in families, we're sisters, we're wives, we're husbands, fathers, mothers, and this is part of our ourselves. But then we are also, we're professors or we're lawyers or doctors, or we have, these other careers that are really influencing our lives. And then outside of that, we have hobbies, we have interests. I'm a reader, I'm a writer, I'm a big fan of my cat, and I'm a home baker, cookies, all those things. And I'm always trying to figure out, well, who am I allowed to be? What role needs to rise to the top in this situation? Um, and fairy tales for me was a place where I saw my identity reflected, even from an early age, in a very positive way. A girl, who's not mature, just a regular old girl, can be the hero of a tale like Hansel and Gretel, or a beautiful woman can save the day, right? Or people like my grandmother, they are the heroes, the matriarchs in stories like Cinderella, or they can be villains. And that was also really empowering to see that, the person that everyone fears, the person with the most power, is a woman. And so for me, the who do I get to be, and asking like, can I be a hero? Can I be a mom and the heroine of this story? Can I be, a fairy godparent in this instance? And knowing that fairy tales sort of taught me, you can do these things, you can have multiple identities. That has been really empowering for me and has sort of influenced what I find interesting and what I like to explore in stories. And my characters are always asking me, who am I? And hey, do I get to be a heroine or the hero or whatever it is? And a lot of my inspiration this year has come from villains or antagonists of tales saying, wait a minute, can't I be a hero? And that's led to a lot of fun and creativity and exploration for me because yeah, you can be a misunderstood hero, and we can have a lot of fun exploring how that all plays out. And that's kind of where Diamonds and Toads, my retelling, kind of moves around. Like, yeah, maybe you are the heroine in this particular story.
I love that you can explore all of that in your writing and do it through fairy tales. That makes my heart sing, and I just absolutely love it. I can't recommend Amy's books enough. Maybe, Amy, just to wrap up, you could tell us all a little bit about your own writing process, since we're all writers in the room and we're always looking for tips as to what works best.
Absolutely. Um, I find a lot of inspiration from fairy tales, obviously, from the plots or the motifs of ones that I'm unfamiliar with or familiar with. I Questions often fuel my writing process. Why would someone be compelled to do something that I don't understand? And could there be a really good reason? My short story that was published by the Fairy Tale magazine is based on Rapunzel and the idea that perhaps this was an unwanted pregnancy and that the witch demanding to raise the daughter was in fact a kindness. And so sort of asking and then sort of leaning into the answers that I want to realize, right? I want to realize compassion. I want to realize empathy. And I want to explore, comfort and escapism and whimsy. So that really sort of leaning into it fuels my writing process.
That's beautiful. And your story that was published in the Fairy Tale magazine, The Witch's Table, I believe was the title, right? That is still available on your website. I think there's a link to it. So in the web link that I put in the chat, you can find the story if you haven't read that and learn more about Amy. So thank you so much for chatting with me today, Amy. But I'm so excited that you were able to join us and give us some insight into your writing.
Kelly, thank you. This was so fun. And it's so fun to celebrate fairy tales and sort of how special they are with everybody here with kindred spirits. So thank you.